Top of the evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're at the bench. We're going to be talking about the latest and greatest from the Max Flow people. I've been talking to Joseph quite a little bit over the last year and a half, 2 years. It's been like a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations in the process. Essentially, I got to say cheers to my buddy Dave over in Ireland. If you've guessed it, we're getting close to Christmas. So cheers to my buddy Dave for sending that 500i over when he did, because it got the ball rolling with the process. Anyway, cheers. Got the ball rolling. It's been a long time coming. He's had a lot of problems with just the whole process of getting these covers to market. What we're going to be looking at tonight is the latest generation of the rain cover, if you will, but we're going to talk about a little bit of the history. It's been a long time ago now. A year and a half, I met with Joseph, showed him the 500i that my buddy Dave sent me from Ireland. So I'd been talking to Joseph heavily since in about February. I think late February is when that 500i showed up. I checked out the air cleaner system on that, and I called Joseph like pretty much immediately, and I said, dude, you got to make a cover for this saw. This is, if any of the Stihl saws need it, it's this one, based on what I saw with that machine that came from Ireland after just a few weeks of use. So we talked for a while. I met up with him in June, and then I ended up with a prototype version cover about November, I think it was, a year ago in November. And did some saw testing with that. Kind of had some feedback. He had some revisions. This is like the 4th generation prototype cover, dealing with some of the revisions, if you will. And then I think there was 6 versions before the pre-production one came out. I was going to send Dave one of these pre-production ones from the original batch. This is technically would be the summer cover. But through those conversations with Joseph and some of the other people that ended up getting some of the first production covers, they kind of were echoing a couple things that well, one thing in particular that I had talked about was getting more coverage over the element itself. We should probably put one in here. Well, yeah. So essentially, the cover goes over the element, but there was a lot of exposure here. Now, technically speaking, there's only about one hole that it's catching in there, part of on the opposite sides, left and right, partial hole exposure. And some of the other guys that had those summer version covers were kind of echoing something that I said immediately to him when I received the first production, or excuse me, the first prototype cover actually, so a year ago in November. Now, working in the monsoons out on the West Coast, you get a lot of rain sometimes, and guys will leave their saws sitting out on the ground overnight, over the weekend. They won't cover them up, and it just didn't look like it was one of those things that would be a good deal, even though the oil is going to shed a lot of the water. I've seen where one guy doesn't even actually oil these, if you can believe that. But anyway, that's a whole nother issue. Essentially, there's a lot of brush and some strips out on the West Coast as well. I looked at it from that angle, as well as the lack of coverage for the rain. Also, for the brush situation, you put this on, you get in those brush holes where you have to saw your way from tree to tree, and you're going to end up getting something in there, and it's going to tear that element eventually. So had quite a few conversations. He decided, after a couple people had echoed what I said, to come up with, this is another prototype situation where we did some more testing. This is one of the summer covers. He designed a little piece, a little shroud to fit in here, and we ended up doing some saw testing and reached the conclusion that it has a lot better coverage of the element, as you can see right here, both for rain and for brush. So I actually like that. There's been a little bit of an adjustment on the new ones for the mechanism that actually tightens or closes the nut on the cover. He altered that also in the latest generation covers, which we're going to take a look at here. Actually, I guess we're taking a look at it right now. So I ended up getting 4 of the first batch covers, so I'm super thankful. It was pretty sweet. Pretty thankful there. So we're going to actually take a look inside this, since this is going to be kind of the world's first look, if you will. And so one of the things that I will mention, I know they blow these elements out. I've seen where there's still dust inside of those. Me, on a personal level, I always blow this element out with air before I actually oil them. That's just what I do. But if we take a look at this cover, and you can see there's evidence of dust. Now the oil is going to trap that, of course, so it's not necessarily something to be overly concerned about. But if we take a look at this cover, we can see it pretty much mirrors what's happening with the prototype testing cover that I used for a few days. And we'll just check it out. But one of the things I think I probably should mention before, we'll get it hooked up and then we'll talk about the other part. It's a lot of information a guy's got to try to remember to cover, me and my feeble brain. But essentially, you can see how it fits in there nicely. Thought that was kind of cool. So now we can see that it's a lot better coverage. But in order for this to work right, there's going to have to be some trimming that happens. Now, on the website, if you go to www.maxwellfilters.com/500i-mods, so you have to basically go into the website, and then you have to go to the 500i mods, and it shows you some of the trimming that has to happen. So there's a couple choices. Well, there's probably 3 choices technically. You can trim the shroud as it's shown right here, or you can trim the cover itself, or you can trim them both. It kind of defeats the purpose if you trim too much off of the cover itself. Okay, so my Potato Productions Incorporated filming device showed full batteries on the LED screen initially, then somehow in the process it decided that it was going to gobble up all the battery life in like a 10-minute interval. So we're kind of going back at it again after a brief interruption, if you will. I have to kind of start over in a way because I haven't figured out where the problem is. So if we're going to look at the concept of testing, kind of go way back in the beginning, I guess. This is the 7th iteration or 8th iteration of the 500i prototype cover operation in the testing saga that's been going on. There's a couple local faller guys that I ran into at the saw shop. They were also involved in some field testing. Had an opportunity to talk to them for a few minutes and get some feedback, which is kind of cool. It's always nice to be able to get feedback from other guys that are well versed in West Coast conditions, if you will. And so one of the things that we're going to look at real quick is, I don't know if you can see that in there. I'm trying to light it up for you. There's not a lot of space in there once the new shroud gets added. If you want to take a look, this is, I think, about one of the 4th gen prototype version covers that came out in April. Yeah, I think it was April 2021, I guess, probably. Somewhere around in there. It's a quote-unquote summer cover. This is more of a winter cover. They're all switching to this style right here, and a guy's going to be able to trim to suit. But essentially, he retooled the whole operation to get some extra protection over the element. One of the things that I talked to Joseph about quite a little bit, until I guess I was feeling like I was going to piss him off if I pressed the issue anymore, was having something over the top. This is actually one of the pre-production version summer covers. You can see the differential. And I was kind of like a full court press, if you will, in some degrees, until, like I said, I got to that place where I thought if I pushed too much harder, I'd be pissing him off. And I didn't really want to do that because I like Joseph. He's a heck of a nice guy. Again, I'm not affiliated with that operation in any way, shape, stretch. Anything you can conjure up as far as getting a tie there, I'm not. But I am lucky enough and fortunate enough and blessed enough to be able to know him well enough at this point to call him on a phone, cell phone if you will, and have a convo like I did tonight about this process. And so what he told me was they're currently available on the website, which I talked to him 2 nights ago when I got the box of these covers. Essentially, we were talking about some of the field testing that happened in the process with this newest generation version. This is the production version. Again, available currently on the website as far as I know. And what we found through the process was, I don't know if you can see that, there's some rubbing happening right there. So if a guy was to go buy one of these new version brush covers, if you will, you have to go on the website and become a new customer, I think. That's how that's working. I've been lucky enough to be able to get them like in person. But he kind of has a nice little expose, if you will, on how to basically deal with the situation as getting the trim. There's option 1, leave the entire baffle in place or move it completely. You can do whatever you want, I guess. My thing is, with the stock spring system, you're not going to be able to leave it in place, or you're going to be having issues like that. Now, he's concerned that you're going to cause the filter to come off and you're going to break the seal. Maybe even move it to enough to pop the little tang out, and then it's not sealing correctly. That was kind of his concern in a way, which I don't necessarily disagree with it, but that's something he expressed. So stock springs, I don't know how you're going to be able to, on God's green earth, leave that baffle in there. You're going to be having problems. The second option he has listed is take 1/4 of an inch out of the baffle itself, but then you get less exposure or more exposure, less exposure of the baffle over the top of the element, or more exposure of the element out in the elements, if you will. And then we have the West Coast trim, which is basically taking it out of the cover itself, which I did that on this one. Essentially, you want a straight line from the corner to the corner here, we got this, it's kind of fancy the way they've have these little different, I don't know, shapes in this cover itself. They used to be a little more simplistic. Now they're more space age looking. I'm pretty sure it's to help a guy be moving faster through the woods. They're more aerodynamic now, the way they're shaped with the louvers and stuff, and the body moldings and whatnot. But anyway, back on track and being serious. Essentially, you're looking for a straight shot from here to this upper edge, straight line across, straight shot from this recess right here to this upper edge, straight across on both sides. And then essentially you're trimming out about 1/4 of an inch off of here and maybe about 3/8 of an inch off the sides. A guy's going to have to maybe check that out a little bit. It's something like that, 1/4 inch at least out of the top right here. So again, you want to go to, we'll get my prop over here, maxflowfilters.com, and you want to go to 500i mods, and you arrive at this page right here, which I think there's some additional information on that page besides what we have here. This is just basically spelling it out, what I'm talking about. But essentially, we trim this cover, and what happens is then the new design, rain cover, brush cover if you will, does not actually make contact anymore. Now this side seems to fall into line over here. If we look at that cover, there's a tang and there's 2 tangs, one on each side. The one on the flywheel side seems to always go in by itself. The one on the drive side seems to not necessarily always go in by itself. And so you have to make sure that that one's aligned properly. Now if we look in here again, we can see, I'm hoping that you can see that, it's a lot more open in there now. You're not going to make contact with that with this saw because I've beefed up the spring mount system quite a little bit. It actually behaves more like a 460 or 461 that's rubber mounted. This saw doesn't move that much in actuality. Some of the other ones that we were testing with, they're moving around, and you got to be kind of careful. You end up with contact being made. Now I think if a guy was to reef on something like that, you might actually be able to make contact in there, but I'm not exactly positive. And if a guy finds that he's hitting that baffle a little bit, then you can basically trim a little bit more from the bottom side of the cover underneath here, wherever it's making contact. It'd be pretty easy fix actually. So I thought that was kind of a way to address the maximum coverage, if you will. And so if we kind of, well, we're not lining up very well. We'll put this one on there and see what happens. Yeah, okay. I don't have the thing out of the way yet for the exhaust relief. But if you put it in there, make sure that tang's lined up properly. There's a maximum amount of room in there, and you can't really see the element at all. It's pretty much, by the time you twist the knob, pop it into place, it's pretty much got that element completely covered. Now there's going to be a little bit of exposure if you're putting an undercut in on that, using that side, and there's a little teeny tiny bit of exposure right there as well, but it's minuscule in the grand scheme of things. Now the other thing that I need to mention in this process is the original lids for the cage were from a 661. They had to be oriented in the proper fashion, and essentially it was having, with a 661 you have to have them aligned like this, or orientated with those 2 big ridges pointed up. With the 500i you have to have those pointed those ridges pointed down. So this was kind of an intermediate thought that he kind of had, where essentially you can see it says 500i up, 661 up, had that mold changed a little bit. And then he decided to kind of upgrade the 500i lid itself. And this is actually redesigned a little bit, even more so. He said it won't actually work with a 661, so essentially this is only a 500i version. That's why it's gray. There's no way to confuse it. It's easy to delineate which one you're talking about when you're changing filters, or which one you're going to use, I guess, essentially when you're, I don't know, cleaning your filters. You guy might be doing it all on Saturday afternoon or something. You're cleaning 3 or 4 from the week before, and you got stuff going everywhere on your bench. It's pretty easy to look at these lids and go, oh yeah, I know where they go. And so that's actually kind of an ingenious little thought that he had to make it a completely different cover. And again, this doesn't necessarily work with 661. That's what Joseph told me, wanted me to let everybody out there know. The other thing that he wanted me to let everybody out there know is in the original batch that went out, I don't know, a couple months ago now, I guess, they had the 661 version. He said that if a guy needs some other filters or needs some other cover kits or whatever a guy might need when it comes time to order some more supplies, I guess, essentially accoutrements, if you will, for your saw, let him know if you ended up with one of the original 500i kits that had the black lid, and they'll pop a gray lid in there for you. So he wanted me to make sure everybody out there knew that part of the equation. Next time you're ordering something, you know, especially if there's a sealing issue, if you're noticing any debris getting by or something like that, there's a good opportunity to upgrade, if you will. So I got to say a special thanks to Mr. Ryan and Mr. Karsten. I've been using their saws in this process. They've been uber patient with me as it's taken a long time. We've been testing in various stages of cylinder covers, cylinder cover mod versus no mod. We've been testing with various different rain covers or brush covers, if you will. I got to segue back. I really thought it was cool, the West Coast trim. I don't know if I actually mentioned that. I kind of just thought about it. So essentially this cover here has got the West Coast trim on it, which I really thought that was kind of cool way to term that. We'll check them out. We can see how there's quite a bit of material removed right there. And again, depends on your spring mount system. A guy may have to do some more trimming. It's just one of those things you're going to have to try. But the diagram's pretty good on the website, actually explaining what you need to do. So, all right, so I segued off because I kind of had an epiphany. Sorry about that. But anyway, thanks to those two gentlemen, Mr. Ryan and Mr. Karsten, for being uber patient with me as I've been kind of trying different stuff on their saws with this process. And got to again say special thanks to my buddy Dave over in Ireland, sending that original saw over, like I said, almost 2 years ago at this point, and getting the ball rolling. And because we're coming up on 2 years for the final version to actually hit the market from when he first sent that saw, and a year and a half from when Joseph first got a look at the original 500i cover. If we want to take a look at one of those, we can see that the max flow cover has bigger louvers in the side, allowing more air to get in there. This is the PTO side. And if we look on the flywheel side, we can see it's the same, bigger louvers, so there's more air getting in there. Conceptually, we can take a look and see that the new lid with, new rain cover, brush cover, whatever, with the baffle in it actually affords more protection than what we see on the stock one. So I thought that was kind of cool. And again, this project's taken him a long time, cost him a pretty penny as he's had to retool to get to this stage of the game. I think he's well pleased with the outcome. I'm well pleased with the outcome. I'm super thankful and grateful that I was given the opportunity to go ahead and be part of the R&D team. It's been an interesting process. I actually kind of enjoyed helping him out. Like I said, I don't know what happened in the original video, if we actually got to that place, but with the new setup, a lot of times guys are putting an extra donut on here to keep the sealing process happening. With the stock system, with the new and improved gray lid on the cage, the engagement is quite a bit more positive. And so a guy shouldn't actually need that anymore. Again, you got to make sure that tang gets lined up properly. But the guy shouldn't need to do anything other than run the stock componentry. It's got a nice engagement. I think there's been a little bit of a redesign in that situation as well in this iteration, which, again, I think we're at the 8th version right now in this 1.5 year long process. So anyway, kind of dealt with what's happening here. Fit and finish is awesome as usual. Super thankful that we now have these available. So yeah, check the website out and see what's available at this point. Alrighty, well, thanks for watching this session. Have a blessed day wherever you might be on God's green earth.